What is happening, guys? Cody Plays here, bringing you another Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel video. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a top 10 list, but this is going to be for the budget decks in the current format. So that's going to be, the current format we're in right now is the October 22 format. We just got a new ban list that's going to be going into effect on October 28th, so in about a week or so. And this is going to be a budget tier list for those, for that upcoming format. I want to begin by saying that making a budget list in Master Duel is really difficult because the game is inherently so free to play, right? We have crafting, we have selection packs, we have bundles, we have a lot of resources in this game to make it so building a deck is very easy to do. As long as you know what you want to build and just focus on building it and don't try to build everything at once, you're going to be able to do it free to play, right? So that's something important to note. That's kind of just the main disclaimer I wanted to say with this. So it's really hard to rank decks as far as budget goes, but how I'm going to try to do it is based on 3 different categories. The first one is cost to power level, right? So what I mean by cost is how much URCP or SRCP it costs to build it, whether the cards are in a structure deck, whether the cards are in selection packs, whether the cards are in a bundle, whatever it might be, right? So that's going to be the accessibility of the cards, and the power level is going to be exactly what it sounds like. This is going to be a more traditional style of tier list where the best deck in the game is going to be given, more praise for being more powerful, right? So those are going to be kind of the main factors that go into it. It's really difficult because some decks have structure decks, some decks don't. Some decks are in selection packs that are currently in the game, some that are in selection packs that aren't currently in the game because they were time gated, which is really weird. I don't know why they did it like that, but it's going to cause a little bit of a discrepancy on this list, but I will point that out when it occurs. What I have on screen right now is just some some SR staples. So some SR alternatives to URs. The main ones I want to highlight here, I'm not going to go through all of them, are DD Crow, Droll, and Lancia, and Gamma, and the pot cards, I'll say. Those cards can pretty much go in any deck, right? And they're going to be good for any deck, and they're great, UR replacements. But anything else on this list, if your deck can sustain it, definitely give it a shot. It's great budget options. But without further ado, let's jump right on into the first budget deck I want to talk about. This is the number 10 deck that I want to talk about today, and that is Umi Control. This deck is it's brand new. It's really powerful, and it's really cheap. Pretty much all the chase cards, I shouldn't say all the chase cards, but the new URs come in the Cosmic Ocean selection pack, which is out currently right now. Now, in about a month or two, this is not going to be available, and it's only going to be accessible through the Master Pack. So this is going to become a lot more quote-unquote expensive because it's not as accessible when that happens. But currently, this is a great option. Obviously, this is not a complete deck, but it's very close to. It's 30 cards, and you don't have to play all these cards, but you can play whatever you want. This is just kind of a rough estimate of what a main deck would start to look like. You can also play the Solemn cards, you can play the pot cards, you can play some hand traps, right? And round this out. But all in all, this core, including this extra deck core here down, is coming out to 210 URCP and 360 SR. So very cheap and very powerful. Moving on to the next deck, we have Marincess. This is also in the new Cosmic Ocean selection pack, but it's also in the older selection pack, which is the Essence of Flora and Ocean. That is the main reason this deck is not ranked higher. It's in 2 separate selection packs. The old cards are not in the new selection pack, and vice versa. So that raises the cost of this significantly, in my opinion. Also, the fact that once Cosmic Ocean is out of rotation, who knows when the new Marincess cards are going to get added to a selection pack that can just be opened up whenever you want. So it's kind of a weird way of explaining it, but for those of you who don't know, in the current game, when the Cosmic Ocean selection pack goes away, it's no longer being sold, you're not going to be able to get those cards from anything but the Master Pack until they decide to put Cosmic Ocean within the sets that are craftable. Very weird way of doing it. I don't know why Konami's decided to do it like that, but that's currently how it is here in October of 2022. Hopefully, whenever you're watching this, it's changed. Whether it's a year from now, a month from now, whatever. Hopefully it's changed. But currently, that's how it is. And because of that, this deck is a lot lower on the list than it would be otherwise. Something I will note is this 240 UR is not exactly accurate. We can get Signet Mining from a structure deck, We can get this from a structure deck now, the Burning Spirit structure deck, and that's going to save us 90 URCP. And I highly recommend doing that because 90 URCP is way more valuable than 1,500 gems. You know, these are 500 gems each in that structure deck, or 30 URCP each. Highly recommend spending the gems. So because of that, this deck is very, very cheap. And this extra deck is complete. You know, you don't need any more than this. This is I think it's 15 cards actually. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yep, we got a full extra deck here, half of a main deck here, and you can add in the pots, the Maxies, the Ash Blossoms, which Ash Blossom does come in a bundle, so that's free to play. That's important to note. Just a bunch of other cards, and all in all, this deck is just very, very cheap. Moving on to Sword Soul, everyone's favorite. Yeah, no, I'm not surprised this is on here. This deck is very cheap overall. The core deck is not expensive. You know, we can get this entire core here. It's a 30-card core with basically a 15, or this is a 14-card extra deck, but basically a complete extra deck for just 330 UR and 390 SRCP. Very cheap, very affordable, and very efficient. This has got the same problem as Marincess does, is that these cards are only in the Master Pack now. It says Refined Blade there, but that's because that's the selection pack that was time-gated, and you can no longer go into Refined Blade in the current way the Master Duel is set up. So, unless I'm mistaken on that, but last time I checked, that was still like that, and it's been like that since the new selection pack started coming out. So that's really unfortunate. So that makes this deck a lot more quote-unquote expensive, but even with that, the deck is dirt cheap. You know, it's dirt cheap crafting-wise, and it's the second best deck, if not the best deck in the game right now. So can't really go wrong with this. But it only being in the selection pack that is no longer, you know, accessible is why it's so low. Moving on to the next spot, we got Despia. If Sword Soul was the second best deck, Despia is the best deck, and that's kind of crazy to realize that the best decks in this game are completely free to play. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me. But we can get this entire 37 main deck core in 15 card extra deck. I'm pretty sure this is 15 here, unless I messed up or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's only 14. And we can let's throw in an Ash Dragon really quickly to make this 15. All right. So now we got a 15 card extra deck and a 37 card main deck that's completely viable for 510 UR and 480 SR. Wild. Absolutely insane. This deck is so cheap, so much cheaper than anyone thought on release. Everyone was looking at this like, oh my gosh, we got to spend URs on the Mirror Jades, URs on the Albions, URs on the Lubellions, the Chimeras, all the Despia extra deck, right? And the Branded Fusion. It's absolutely insane how expensive this deck is, but it's actually not. The reason being is because this deck doesn't play hand traps really. It can play hand traps, and if you are playing hand traps, this deck's cost goes up significantly. But if you're not playing hand traps and you don't really have a desire to play hand traps, this is an incredibly affordable deck, and it's one of the best decks in the game. The reason this is also not higher on the list is because, one, we're not playing staples in this list currently, right? So we're not playing the Maxies, the Ash Blossoms, the Nibiru, stuff like that. So it's just a more expensive core. And also because it's got the same problem as Sword Soul does. And the selection packs that these were in are rotating out, right? So Ruler's Mask, that's not craftable in the current format of Master Duel. Neither is Refined Blade. And then once the Newborn Dragon's time runs out on the Master Duel store, it's not going to be craftable. That selection pack's not going to be craftable either. You're going to either have to pull this from like the Mirror Jade or the Branded Fusion or anything like that from a Master Pack, which is really, really hard to do, or craft them with your URCP. So it's a lot more quote-unquote expensive than decks that are just in standard selection packs that have been here since the start of the game. But all in all, Despia is very cheap in this form, and it's a great option if anyone doesn't have it yet. Moving on to the next deck, we got Triple D here, and this might surprise some people, but it's very cheap and it's very good, honestly. We got a 27 card main deck core here, and then a full 13 card extra deck core. This is pretty much all you need. This is not exactly the perfect ratios. I don't know. I'm not I'm not a DDD like aficionado. Like, I don't know exactly how to ratio this deck out, but I was looking at some of the top decks, and this seemed like a very good starting point. Something going for this deck is almost all of this is in the same pack. All the old stuff is in the same pack. The only new stuff is the Griffin, this thing, the Field Spell, the Headhunt, and the Deus Ex Machina X. So all that stuff is in its own pack. It's in the Invincible Raid pack, which is unfortunate because once that goes out of the market on the store, you're going to have to craft these. But despite that, it's still so cheap, right? It's only 3 SRs and 2 URs. Like, that's really cheap. And everything else is in a selection pack that you can just craft. It's in the cross-dimensional contracts, so it's really easy and accessible to get. And you can just fill those extra 13 cards in the main deck and 2 cards in the extra deck with some, like a Baron, like a Zeus, with Maxis, Ash Blossoms, Called Bys, so on and so forth. So all in all, this is a very cheap deck. 150 URCP, 540 SR, and you can't go wrong with it. One thing that I will note about Triple D, there's a really steep learning curve. But once you're able to overcome that learning curve, this deck's going to serve you great. The next deck is Pendulum Magicians. This is the first deck with a structure deck in the current game that I'm going to talk about. And that structure deck gives you almost everything on screen here. It doesn't give you everything, but it gives you almost everything. What it doesn't come with is the Luster, the Black Fang Magician, the Double Iris Magician, the Purple Poison, the Astrograph, Chronograph, the Revolution Dragon, and most of the extra stuff down here. It gives you the Time Star, but none of the other extra stuff. But that is really, really awesome because for 1,500 gems, you can get almost this entire core just for 1,500 gems. And then if you decide to spend another 150 SRCP and 30, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I was reading my notes wrong. If you spend 1,500 gems and 420 SRCP and 210 URCP, you can have this entire list shown on screen here. But that's also including, like, those also include Apollo, which you should be getting, Selene, which you'll be getting. So those are also included in those figures that I just gave you. And those are staples for the deck as well. But all in all, you can get the deck for really cheap. And it doesn't play hand traps. It's very similar to Despia. It doesn't need them. Honestly, it kind of bricks on hand traps, so you really don't need to do that. And this deck is only going to get better as time goes on, because we're just going to continue to get more and more support for pendulums as the months progress. And all in all, this is a great option. It's been topping tournaments left and right, and overall, it's very, very cheap. Moving on to the next deck, we got good old Eldlich, guys. Yep, everybody's favorite control floodgate deck. Who doesn't love Eldlich, if we're being honest here? This deck's toxic. Like, let's be honest. It's very cheap, though, right? So the core on screen here, which is just the Eldlich cards and a few floodgates, 60 UR, 330 SR. You can also, fill this in with, like, the Solemns, right? I'm going to go ahead and build this deck really quickly because we only have 16 cards. I'm just going to go ahead and build a 40-card deck just to show you how cheap it really is. I'm going to start off with Solemn, if I can spell. There we go. 3 Solemn Strikes, 3 Solemn Judgments. One of these comes from the bundle, so it's completely free to play. I'm going to throw in some... what do we want to throw in? Dogmatica Punishments. I'm going to throw in some Dogmatica Punishments. This card's absolutely great. Personally, when I play Eldlich and I play Punishment, I also like to play a few Ecclesias and one Nadir Servant just to make it searchable. And because of that, I like to play the Ash Dragon and the Intis in the extra deck. I'm going to throw 2 Intis and 1 Ash Dragon in the extra just to give us some diversity of what we send there. We're also going to play some pot cards. So Pot of Extravagance, 3 of those, 1 Pot of Prosperity. Nice. We're going to also play the Heavenly Dragon Prison thingy. Yep, this guy right here. 3 Lord of the Heavenly Dragon Prisons. This card's absolutely insane. We're going to play some Torrential Tributes, maybe. This is a really great cheap trap option. It's a rare, so it's very accessible, free to play. And then we'll round the deck out with some Ice Dragon's Prisons, which is just all around a great trap card. Of course, you could play some more Floodgates. We're only playing 5. Only 5 Floodgates, right? You could play more, but I personally think Skill Drain and Summon Limit are the most universal right now, so those are the ones that I would put in the deck. And then after that, you can play TC Boos, Rivalries, Gozens, whatever you want. For the extra deck, because we're playing a Pot of Extravagance, I would just max out on some of this stuff. Like, Right, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. You can play like a Gustav Max if you have the URCP for it, but you definitely don't have to. You can play a Constellar Polides. You can play, what's it called? Despian Proskinian? Despian Proskinian. The reason you'd play a card like this is just because it's a rare. You wouldn't actually play this if you weren't on a budget. But if you're on a budget and don't want to craft like a, higher attack, like more accessible extra deck cards, this is a really good option to pair up with Dogmatic Punishment. Because Dogmatic Punishment, basically, you target a monster on the field, then send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard with like equal to or like more attack than the targeted monster to destroy it. So usually 9 times out of 10 you're going to send Intis, right? Because you send Intis, destroy a monster, then Intis effect activates to destroy another card on the field. Or you're going to send the Ash Dragon to pop a card and then search during end phase, search out your Ecclesia during end phase. But Proskinian is a 3200 attack monster that you can just send off of punishment. That's a rare. That's what's important. It's a rare. It just outs almost any monster in the game. So, yeah, I mean, that's a very rough way of building Eldlich, but just like that, we're at 510 URCP and 630, dirt cheap, really, really cheap here. And we have a tournament-ready, competent Eldlich list, so, yep. Sadly, Eldlich is still one of the best budget decks in the game, and there's really no denying it. So, but anyways, moving on to the next deck, we got Tri-Brigade. Surprise, surprise, is on the list. This has been on the list, just like Eldlich, since the start of the game. This list here, let me fix this really quickly. This list here is very, very simple. This is just a 19-card core that we got on screen here. It's just the Tri-Zoo engine. All of this basically comes from 2 selection packs, right? Just the Tri-Brigade selection pack and the Zodiac selection pack is going to get you pretty much everything in the deck. And that's going to come out to 240 UR and 210 UR SRCP. Then from there, this is a full 15-card extra deck. I'm going to put that out there. You can go in, add your staples, add your hand traps, add your going second cards, whatever it is, and you're going to be able to build this deck for very, very cheap. So yeah, you can't really go wrong with it. Moving on to the next deck, we got everybody's favorite Floowandereeze. Oh boy, this deck is really cheap and very, very powerful. This is arguably the best deck in the game right now, up there with Sword Soul and Despia. It's one of, if not the best decks in the game right now, because it has access to cards like Barrier Statue, it has cards like access to like Ryza, Impin, so on and so forth, and it's got one of the best engines in the entire game. When the Floowandereeze engine gets rolling, it is arguably the best engine that's ever been printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because there's really no stopping it once it gets going. So, but that's the problem. It's hard to get started sometimes. Like it deals with inconsistency, which is why the advent of the adventure coming into the game is so powerful for this deck. But this core that we can see on screen, this 18-card main deck in a very, very small... Oh, sorry, didn't mean to get rid of that barrier statue. Throw that back in there. While that's loading, I'm going to... Oh, here we go. Yep, add that barrier statue back in there. The extra deck is very, very loose, I should say. You can play whatever you want. I just have these down here because these are just great generic cards for the deck, right? The Assembled Nightingale just takes 2 or more level 1s, and you can attack directly, then overlay into Downward, overlay into Zeus for a few board wipes. Great. The Wind is great because there's wind monsters in the deck. So, yep, accessible. There's Area because there's water monsters in the deck, and Umi Control is a real deck. Marincess is a real deck. So, these are just good options. Other than that, you can just like cram other cards into the extra deck for your Pot of Extravagance, your Pot of Prosperity, whatever it is. Of course, those will be played in this deck for consistency, but they are not a part of the core engine, so I did not add them. But, of course, can't spell. Of course, we'll be adding in the Extravs, the Prosperity, the Dualities, and we're going to get up to, 600-ish SRCP, but all in all, the deck is hyper cheap, like incredibly cheap, very efficient, one of the best budget decks in the game, and you really can't go wrong with it. So, highly recommend this if you want everyone to hate you. Yep. Moving on to the number 1 budget deck, in my opinion, Salamangreat. It's probably no surprise to anyone that this is the number 1 budget deck because we just got a brand new structure deck that gives you literally the entire deck basically for free. The 3 structure decks in combination with 150 SRCP and 30 URCP is going to get you this entire 25-card main deck core in this entire 15-card extra deck. you're not going to need anything else. This extra deck is completely optimized, maybe except for one card, which is the Heat Leo, but I personally like playing one Heat Leo on my salad. But you don't have to if you don't want to. You can play another Access Code, another Splash Mage, whatever you want, right? It's very versatile. Play whatever you want in that last spot. As far as the main deck goes, this is basically you get all of this just for the structure decks. It's so cheap. It's absolutely insane how cheap it is. And then from there, you can throw in your Maxies, you can throw in your Ash Blossoms, your Droll and Lockbirds, your Pot of Desires, whatever it is you want. And you're going to end up spending basically 1,500 gems and like a few hundred URCP, a few hundred SRCP, and you've got a completely built, very powerful Salamangreat deck. And yeah, honestly, it's very hard to argue with this being the cheapest, most efficient deck in the game because you can get so much of it for literally nothing. But anyways, that is going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the video. Let me know in the comment section below, like what I got right, what I got wrong about this list. There's probably some people that think some of these are in different spots than other ones, but let me know what decks I left off of this list that should have been on here. And also let me know if in the future you want me to change the format. So maybe I'm focusing on some different type of budget decks. Like, just let me know in the comment section below any feedback you guys have for me. Also, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, like whatever it might be to support the channel. Whatever you do, it means the absolute world to me. I appreciate the support so much. And with that being said, I will see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.